In the coming years, strength will no longer decide who survives. Speed won't save you. Intelligence won't protect you. Talent won't guarantee anything. Because the men who fail in the future won't fail because they were weak. They'll fail because they reacted. Centuries ago, a man who survived over 60 real duels without losing once understood this truth better than anyone alive. His name was Miyamoto Musashi, and his most dangerous teaching was not about swords. It was about silence. Musashi once wrote, "The ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them." Most people misunderstand this. They think it means peace. It doesn't. It means control. Because the man who cannot control his reaction is already defeated, long before the fight begins. And in 2026, that rule will decide everything. There is a story rarely told about Musashi. Not a duel, not a victory, but a moment of restraint. One evening, Musashi was publicly insulted by a skilled swordsman. The man wanted attention. He wanted dominance. He wanted Musashi to react. The crowd waited. A lesser warrior would have answered immediately. A proud man would have drawn his blade. Musashi did neither. He stood still, silent, unmoved. The insult continued, louder, more aggressive. Still, nothing. Then Musashi turned his back and walked away. The crowd laughed. They thought he was afraid. But later, that same swordsman was exposed for cowardice, dishonor, and deception. His reputation collapsed. Musashi's didn't rise. It didn't need to. He already understood something most men never learn. You can win without striking a blow. This wasn't weakness. This was timing. Musashi warned against emotional movement more than physical mistakes. In the Book of Five Rings, he wrote, "Do not let your opponent see your spirit." Reaction reveals spirit. Anger reveals insecurity. Defensiveness reveals fear. Urgency reveals loss of control. Every time you react emotionally in public, you hand your opponent a map of your mind. Modern life is built to provoke this. Social media, disrespect, pressure, deadlines, comparison. The world constantly pulls for a reaction, and most men fail, not because they're wrong, but because they respond too fast. Musashi taught that speed without awareness is death. True speed comes from stillness. That is why he trained himself to remain unreadable, even under threat of death. Here is the rule most people will never accept. The moment you react emotionally, you lose power. Musashi didn't call this patience. He didn't call it discipline. He called it strategy. Fix your attention on what is before you, without letting your spirit waver. A samurai did not react to insult. He observed. He did not answer provocation. He allowed the enemy to expose himself. He did not rush. Because the man who rushes is already being controlled. This is not passivity. This is dominance without noise. In battle, Musashi waited until the opponent moved first, because movement reveals intention. In life, it works the same way. The man who stays silent longer gains information, gains leverage, gains time, and time is power. Most men think strength is about asserting themselves. Musashi believed the opposite. He believed the strongest man in the room was the one who could stand still while everyone else exposed themselves. But silence is only powerful when it is intentional. And in the next part, you'll see what happens when this rule is tested, not in theory, but in real confrontation. Because non-reaction is easy in calm moments. The real question is, what happens when the past tries to provoke you again? Silence is easy when nothing is at risk. The real test comes when silence costs you reputation, when walking away makes you look weak, when reacting feels justified. Musashi knew this. That is why he wrote, "In battle, if you make your opponent flinch, you have already won." But here's what most people miss. Musashi didn't flinch his enemies with aggression. He did it with unpredictable calm. And the night he proved this, his life was genuinely on the line. The swordsman Musashi ignored didn't disappear. He followed him. For weeks, insults turned into threats. Threats turned into obsession. The man felt humiliated. And humiliation is dangerous because it turns insecurity into recklessness. One evening, Musashi was cornered outside the city. No crowd, no witnesses, no honor. The swordsman drew his blade. "Draw," he demanded. Musashi didn't. He stood there, hands relaxed, eyes empty, breathing slow. This wasn't courage. This was clarity. Musashi later wrote, "The mind must always be in the state of readiness, yet never fixed." The opponent's hands shook. Musashi's didn't. Here is where most men collapse. When attacked unfairly, when disrespected publicly, when silence feels like surrender. The opponent shouted again, "Are you afraid?" Musashi finally spoke. Only 4 words. "Make your move." That was it. No explanation, no defense, no emotion. And something snapped. The swordsman rushed, fast, angry, predictable. Musashi stepped aside, not back, forward. Later witnesses said the duel ended in seconds, not because Musashi was faster, but because the other man gave himself away. Anger shortened his vision. Ego narrowed his options. Urgency destroyed his balance. Musashi remained untouched. Musashi believed intention itself could betray you. That is why he trained to appear empty. No signal, no tension, no visible readiness. He wrote, "When your spirit is not settled, the sword will betray you." Modern men fail here every day. They telegraph need. They telegraph insecurity. They telegraph urgency. You see it in arguments, in business, in relationships, online. The man who reacts immediately is announcing his weakness. Musashi waited until the enemy committed, then acted without hesitation. Not hesitation, not rage. Precision. Silence terrifies insecure men because it forces them to confront themselves. When you don't react, they project, they escalate, they expose their motive. Musashi understood this. That is why he wrote, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain." Sometimes the path is force. Sometimes the path is restraint. But restraint used correctly creates pressure the enemy cannot control. And pressure breaks men faster than violence. Musashi didn't win because he was emotionless. He won because he refused to be controlled by emotion, his or anyone else's. But silence alone is not mastery, because there comes a moment when silence must end. And when it does, it must end decisively. Silence is power. Restraint is strategy. But there is one mistake Musashi warned against more than any other: hesitation. He wrote, "When the time comes, do not think, act." Most men misunderstand this. They believe action means aggression. It doesn't. It means clarity without delay. Because hesitation is not caution. Hesitation is fear pretending to be wisdom. And in Musashi's world, fear got men killed. In Musashi's most famous duel, he arrived late on purpose, not to disrespect his opponent, but to observe him. The man paced, sweated, fumed. By the time Musashi arrived, the battle was already over. Musashi carved a wooden sword from an oar. Crude, unimpressive. The opponent laughed. Then Musashi stepped forward. Once. No warning, no build-up, no adjustment. The strike was final. Later, Musashi explained, "Once the opponent's spirit is broken, the body follows." This was not luck. This was timing perfected through restraint. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Many men master patience and die there. They wait too long. They analyze endlessly. They seek certainty. Musashi warned against this. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. The moment clarity appears, action must follow. Not rushed, not delayed. Decisive. Hesitation reopens fear. Delay invites doubt. The man who waits after clarity loses the advantage he earned through silence. The modern world is not a battlefield, but the rule is the same. Wait while others react. Observe while others panic. Stay silent while others expose themselves. But when the opening appears, you move. You send the message. You make the decision. You leave the situation. You commit. No explanation, no apology, no second guessing. This is what Musashi meant when he wrote, "In strategy, there is no hesitation. Not recklessness, resolution." The man who masters this law becomes dangerous. Not because he is violent, but because he is unmovable. He cannot be rushed. He cannot be baited. He cannot be pressured into premature action. And when he acts, there is no drama, only consequence. Musashi lived this until his final days. He died undefeated, not because he fought constantly, but because he chose exactly when to fight. Here is the full rule. Be silent when others react. Be still when others rush. And when the moment arrives, act without hesitation. This is not philosophy. This is survival. In 2026, the men who win will not be the loudest. They will not be the angriest. They will not be the fastest. They will be the ones who know when to move. If this series sharpened your mind, stay here. This isn't content, it's training. Subscribe if you're building discipline, clarity, and control, not noise.